Books and The Intuitive Canine Series by Catherine Walton. Chapter 1. A Sweet Start. The early morning sun painted the town in hues of amber and rose, casting long shadows on the cobbled streets of Willowbrook. Each building seemed to tell a story, its bricks whispering tales of bygone eras. But on this particular morning, the tale that would unfold would be like none other. Debbie had always been an early riser. A lifetime of waking up before dawn to preheat ovens and knead dough had turned her into a morning person by necessity. Now, even though her bakery was a cherished memory and no longer a daily routine, the habit remained. So, as per usual, just as the town began to stretch and yawn awake, Debbie was tying her laces, preparing for her morning walk. "Morning, Shadow. Ready for our walk?" She said to the serious-looking black Labrador who sat waiting, tail thumping the floor in rhythmic anticipation. His glossy coat shone with health, his eyes alert and focused on his owner. "And you, Halo," she said, chuckling as the younger yellow Labrador danced around her in circles, his exuberance boundless. "Always the mischievous one, aren't you?" The three of them set out, their footsteps echoing in the quiet of the morning. Willowbrook was an enchanting town with winding lanes, flower-draped cottages, and ivy-covered walls. Everyone knew everyone, and there was a shared understanding among the residents. If you wanted the latest news or a dose of town gossip, Debbie's morning walk was where to get it. Not that she indulged in the gossip herself, but her friendly demeanor and Halo's playful antics made her approachable, and people often stopped to chat. As they passed Mrs. Thompson's house, the old woman was outside, watering her roses. "Morning, Debbie." "The boys seem lively today." Debbie smiled, waving. "They always are, Mrs. Thompson. Eager to see the world." The trio continued, meandering past the town square with its glistening fountain and lively pigeon activity. Halo often attempted to chase the birds, much to Shadow's disapproval, who would give a low growl to keep the younger dog in check. Their route always took them past Willowbrook's pride and joy, its historical library. It was a grand old building with stone gargoyles guarding its entrance and ivy crawling up its walls, giving it an aura of antiquity and wisdom. But today, as they approached the library, something seemed amiss. A crowd had gathered, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity. There were muffled voices, raised in alarm and confusion, and even from a distance, Debbie could sense the tension. "What on earth?" she murmured to herself, quickening her pace. Halo, always eager for excitement, dashed forward, his nose sniffing the air and tail wagging, while Shadow, sensing the gravity of the situation, stayed close to Debbie, offering silent support. As they drew closer, Debbie recognized the library's head librarian, Mrs. Eleanor, her usually pristine appearance now frazzled. Her glasses were askew, and her hands trembled as she spoke with Officer Miller. "Everything's under control, folks," Officer Miller called out, trying to disperse the gathering crowd. But his uneasy glance towards the library's entrance suggested otherwise. "Miss Eleanor?" Debbie approached, Shadow and Halo at her heels. "What happened? Is everything okay?" The librarian's face was pale, her eyes glazed with shock. "Debbie," she whispered. Voice shaky. Debbie's heart missed a beat. Mr. Andrews was not just any librarian. He was a staple in Willowbrook, a man known for his kindness, wisdom, and unparalleled love for books. "What about him?" Debbie urged. Miss Eleanor gulped, struggling to find her voice. "He's inside, not moving, I think." Before she could finish, Halo, with his insatiable curiosity, had slipped through the crowd and into the library. Debbie and Shadow, alarmed, hurried after him, leaving the anxious gathering outside. As they entered the vast hall, lined with towering shelves and laden with the rich scent of old books. An eerie silence met them. At the center, surrounded by scattered books and papers, lay Mr. Andrews. And so, in the heart of the picturesque town of Willowbrook, on a morning that began so ordinarily, a mystery was waiting to unfold. Chapter 2. Muffled Cries in Aisle 5. The atmosphere inside the library was thick with dread. The air filled with a silence so profound it was almost deafening. Debbie's footsteps echoed against the marble floors, a stark contrast to the muted whispers of Willowbrook's residents outside. There, amidst the sunbeams filtering through the high-arched windows, lay Mr. Andrews. His silver hair was tousled, and his glasses askew. Halo, with his ever-curious nature, sniffed the vicinity cautiously, while Shadow sat by Debbie's side, offering a gentle nudge to her hand. It was as if the old Labrador sensed the gravity of the situation. His dark eyes filled with empathy. "Oh, dear God," Debbie murmured, her hands covering her mouth in shock. Her gaze, however, sharpened with observation. For Debbie had always been meticulous, a trait that had made her a successful baker, noticing minute details that many would overlook. Her eyes darted around the scene, coming to rest on a pile of books scattered next to Mr. Andrews. They seemed out of place, almost forming a trail. Each book lay splayed open, their pages crumpled as though they had been hastily thrown. That wasn't like Mr. Andrews. He treated each book with reverence, as if they were his own children. This disarray was too out of character for him. "Debbie, Mrs." Eleanor's voice trembled from behind. "I can't believe this is happening. He was just fine yesterday, going on about a new acquisition for the library." "I'm so sorry, Eleanor," Debbie whispered, putting an arm around the distraught librarian. "Did you notice anything unusual when you arrived?" Eleanor shook her head, taking a moment to collect her thoughts. "I came in early, like always, but when I reached aisle 5, I heard a soft sound like muffled cries. I rushed over and found this." Debbie's gaze returned to the books. "These books. Do you recognize them?" Eleanor blinked through her tears, looking at the titles. "They're from our restricted section. Rare, ancient collections. Why would they be here?" Before Debbie could respond, the echoing sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder until they stopped right outside the library. Moments later, a flurry of officers entered, led by Detective Harrison, known in Willowbrook for his stern demeanor and sharp intellect. His eyes swiftly assessed the scene, taking in every detail. "Miss Eleanor, Mrs. Debbie," he nodded in acknowledgement. "I'll need a complete account of what you saw and found." As Eleanor relayed the morning's events, Debbie, feeling a tug on her dress, looked down to find Halo holding a tattered bookmark in his mouth. It was embroidered with intricate designs, bearing an emblem she didn't recognize. Shadow, with his usual serious demeanor, gave a low whine, urging discretion. Slipping the bookmark into her pocket, she patted Halo's head and whispered, "Good boy." Detective Harrison approached the scene, his face grave. "From our preliminary observation, there seems to be no sign of a natural death. We'll need to conduct a full investigation. This might be a case of foul play." A collective gasp went up among the few who had dared to venture inside. "Homicide? In Willowbrook?" Eleanor's voice cracked. "But who would want to hurt such a kind soul like Mr. Andrews?" "That's what we need to find out," Detective Harrison said, his gaze steely. "We'll need everyone to cooperate fully." Debbie, lost in thought, absently stroked Shadow's back. The town of Willowbrook, with its serene streets and close-knit community, was the last place one would expect to encounter such darkness. But the scattered books, the mysterious bookmark, and the muffled cries from aisle 5 hinted at a mystery far, far deeper than anyone could have imagined. And while the town reeled from this unexpected tragedy, 2 Labradors and their observant owner found themselves in the very heart of it all, ready to unravel the secrets hidden within the hallowed halls of the Willowbrook Library. Chapter 3. The Cookie Crumbles. The Willowbrook Town Hall was abuzz with whispers, its creaky wooden floors resonating with the murmurs of concerned townsfolk. On any other day, such gatherings were for mundane matters, like town fests or communal decisions. But today, there was a sense of urgency, palpable tension hanging in the air. At the front of the hall, a large banner reading for the love of Mr. Andrews was stretched, flanked by 2 stands of white candles, each flame flickering with the town's shared sorrow. Debbie, Shadow, and Halo took a seat towards the back. Shadow, ever the poised one, settled into a sphinx-like pose, his eyes scanning the crowd, while Halo, spotting a familiar friend, wagged his tail in greeting. Debbie took out a cookie from her bag, a habit from her baking days, and shared it between the 2 Labradors. The town hall was always open to all, even to investigations. It was important to keep everyone in the loop of every matter going on in the town. Debbie wondered why they would have an open town hall with this type of investigation, but she was grateful to be there. The gavel struck, and Mayor Higgins stepped forward, his usually boisterous voice somber. "Good evening, Willowbrook. I wish we were meeting under happier circumstances." Debbie's mind wandered to the scattered books and the mysterious bookmark, but she was jolted back to reality when Detective Harrison took the stage. "We have some leads," he began, pinning up 4 photographs on the board behind him. "While we can't jump to conclusions, it's essential to keep an open mind." The first photograph was of Isabel, a slender woman with sharp features and raven black hair. Isabel worked under Mr. Andrews. While on the surface they seemed to get along, we've unearthed evidence of disagreements over library operations and potential book thefts. A few gasps echoed around the hall. Next was Samuel, a man with scholarly glasses and a beard that spoke of years of wisdom. Samuel, a frequent visitor and scholar, had some disputes with Mr. Andrews. Their recent spat was over access to the restricted section. Debbie remembered the pile of books, wondering if they were the cause of this contention. The third photo displayed Clara, the epitome of elegance, her golden hair cascading in waves, her posture regal. Clara, a town heiress, recently approached Mr. Andrews for a particular book valuation. However, he seemed to have discovered something in her collection that she didn't want to be public. Debbie leaned forward, intrigued. What could possibly be in that collection? The last photograph was a stark contrast to the others, a young boy named Finn, with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Don't be fooled by his age," Detective Harrison warned. Finn had multiple disputes with Mr. Andrews over late book returns and damaged items. A minor grudge, you might think, but we can't rule anything out. The room was thick with speculation. Could someone from their quaint town truly be capable of such a deed? Mayor Higgins interjected. "Now, let's not jump to conclusions. We are a community. These are just preliminary suspicions." But Debbie, ever the observer, saw the shift in the room, the side glances, the whispers, the nods of "I always suspected the cookie had indeed crumbled," and its fragments lay scattered among the residents of Willowbrook. After the meeting disbanded, Debbie, Halo, and Shadow made their way out. However, they were halted by Finn, who approached them hesitantly, twiddling with the hem of his shirt. He wasn't in the meeting, but word travels fast in a small town. "Miss Debbie," he mumbled, I didn't do it. Mr. Andrews and I had our differences, but I would never." Debbie knelt, her eyes level with the boy's. "I believe you, Finn. But you need to speak up. Share any information you have." He nodded, wiping away a tear. "I will, Miss Debbie." "Thank you." Debbie watched him run off, Shadow and Halo trotting beside her. She pondered over the array of suspects, the web of motives, and the complexity of human emotions. But at that moment, she knew one thing: Willowbrook's serenity had been disrupted, and it was up to her and her loyal Labradors to piece the puzzle back together. Chapter 4: Sniffing Out Clues. The next day was sunny, the gentle hum of Willowbrook's activities providing a stark contrast to the dark cloud that hung over its residents. The farmer's market, usually a place of joyous barter and laughter, had a more subdued ambiance. Debbie walked among the stalls, buying a loaf of freshly baked bread here, a jar of homemade jam there. Yet her real purpose was to engage the townsfolk, gather tidbits that might help solve the mystery that had so swiftly descended upon them. As she haggled over tomatoes with Mrs. Johnson, Debbie's trained ear picked up whispers from the neighboring stall. "Isabel always had a bit of a temper, you know," whispered one woman. "And she was always at loggerheads with Mr. Andrews about those missing books." Debbie made a mental note. Every detail, no matter how small, might be the key. As she continued her rounds, Halo and Shadow provided their unique kind of assistance. Shadow, with his refined demeanor, always commanded respect. People felt compelled to approach him, to pet him, and in doing so, often revealed more than they intended. On the other hand, Halo's playful nature had children flocking to him, and children, Debbie had often found, were the best observers. It was during one such interaction, with Halo being the center of a group of giggling children, that Shadow began to act unusually. The black Labrador sniffed the air repeatedly, his ears perked, his attention fixed on the embroidered bookmark Debbie had pocketed the day before. Pulling it out, she realized there was a faint but distinct aroma coming from it, a mix of old parchment, cedarwood, and something else she couldn't identify. Shadow's reaction told her that the scent was essential. As Debbie pondered over this new clue, Halo, spotting an open bag near Isabel's stall, decided to indulge his mischief. With a swift move, he snatched a crumpled note peeking out from the bag's edge and trotted over to Debbie, his tail wagging. The note held triumphantly in his mouth. "Good heavens, Halo," Debbie exclaimed, attempting to sound stern, but her eyes betrayed her amusement. She unfolded the note and scanned its contents. "Meet me at midnight. The usual spot. We need to finalize the details." No signature. No indication of the sender or the intended recipient. But given it was from Isabel's bag, the implications were clear. What details was she finalizing? And with whom? Before she could delve further into this newfound clue, Isabel's voice, sharp with annoyance, pierced through the air. "What do you think you're doing? Going through my things?" Debbie met her gaze calmly. "I apologize, Isabel." Halo has a knack for finding what shouldn't be found. Isabel snatched the note, her face a mask of anger and fear. "This is none of your business. Stay out of things you don't understand." Yet, even as she stormed off, Debbie could see the uncertainty in her eyes. There was more to Isabel's story than met the eye. Debbie quickly took out a piece of paper from her purse and rewrote the message quickly to remember exactly what it said. The rest of the day passed in a blur, with Debbie noting down her observations and thought. By evening, she had a list of questions that needed answers and an array of potential leads. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Debbie sat on her porch, a cup of tea in hand. Shadow lay at her feet, while Halo chewed contentedly on a toy nearby. The embroidered bookmark and the cryptic note lay side by side on the table, two pieces in a puzzle that was slowly coming into focus. And Debbie, with her furry companions by her side, was determined to see the picture complete. A mystery was afoot in Willowbrook, and with every passing day, the plot thickened. But Debbie was certain of one thing: the answers she sought were just around the corner, waiting to be uncovered. Chapter 5: Debbie's Deliberation. The morning light streamed through the sheer curtains of Debbie's cozy kitchen. The room was warm, the air filled with the scent of freshly brewed coffee. Shadow lounged by the window, sunbeams casting dappled patterns onto his glossy fur, while Halo played with a few crumbs that had fallen from Debbie's breakfast plate. Debbie sat, the mysterious note spread out in front of her. The edges were worn, indicative of frequent folding and unfolding. Midnight meetings and rare books, she mused aloud, tracing her fingers over the hastily scrawled letters. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Debbie rose, smoothing out her apron, and opened it to find Detective Harrison. "Morning, Debbie," he greeted, tipping his hat slightly. "Heard our furry friend caused quite a stir at the market yesterday." Debbie chuckled. That he did, and he might have found something useful. "Come in." As they settled into the living room, Debbie shared her findings, the peculiar bookmark, the crumpled note from Isabel's bag, and her observations from the townsfolk's whispers. Harrison raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "Your investigative instincts rival mine, Debbie. We were indeed looking into a dispute between Mr. Andrews and Isabel. It appears they had a disagreement over a rare book, one of great value and significance to the library." Debbie sipped her tea, deep in thought. "While it's evident there's tension between them, I can't shake off the feeling there's more to this than just a book dispute. The bookmark's unusual scent, for instance. And why would Isabel risk everything for just one book?" Harrison nodded, taking out a photograph. "This," he said, placing it on the table, "is the elusive sonata. It's not just any book. It's said to have illustrations that, when deciphered, lead to a hidden treasure. Sounds like fiction, but both Mr. Andrews and Isabel believed in its legend." Debbie leaned in, studying the intricate gold-embossed cover of the book in the photo. "The plot thickens," she whispered. Harrison left soon after to see if there was anything else he could uncover, promising to let Debbie know if he found anything. The rest of the day saw Debbie visiting the library, the scene of the tragedy. The grand oak shelves seemed to lean in, whispering secrets. The library, usually a haven of knowledge and silence, now had an undertone of mystery and shadows. Debbie's attention was soon drawn to the restricted section, where the elusive sonata had once been housed. Amidst the dim light and dusty shelves, she found a ledger, the library's record of borrowed books. Flipping through it, she found multiple entries by Isabel for the rare book, each time returned punctually. This didn't seem like the behavior of someone intent on theft. Her musings were interrupted by a soft voice. It wasn't about the treasure for them. Debbie turned to see Clara, the elegant heiress, her eyes reflecting a depth of understanding. "It was about legacy," Clara continued. "Mr. Andrews saw that book as the jewel of this library. And Isabel? She believed she could solve the riddles within its pages, establishing her name as a premier historian." Debbie considered this. "So you're saying it wasn't greed, but pride?" Clara nodded. "Precisely. But I agree with you, Isabel isn't capable of murder. She's passionate, not violent." The day drew to a close with more questions than answers. As Debbie walked back home, the streets of Willowbrook bathed in the soft golden hues of sunset. She felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on her. Returning home, she found a surprise waiting for her. Samuel, the scholarly suspect, was at her doorstep. Shadow and Halo, eyeing him warily. "I've heard you're trying to solve Andrew's death," Samuel began without preamble. "I believe I have information that can help." Debbie motioned for him to come in, her mind racing. The web of intrigue was more tangled than she'd imagined, but with each thread she unraveled, she felt one step closer to the truth. Chapter 6: Fetching Secrets. A fresh layer of snow coated the picturesque streets of Willowbrook. The white blanket seemed to bring a sense of purity, contrasting with the muddy mystery unfolding in the heart of the town. Debbie decided to return to the library with her trusty companions. The grand building, with its tall Gothic windows and arched doorways, held secrets within its stone walls, secrets that were now beginning to unravel. While Halo was busy playing fetch with a crumpled piece of paper, Shadow was demonstrating his usual dignified curiosity. Debbie had settled in one of the vintage reading chairs, rereading the elusive sonata, attempting to glean any clues from its ornate pages. As she adjusted in the chair, there was an odd creaking sound. Shadow's ears perked up. With precise, calculated movements, he began to inspect the chair, nudging its armrest and sniffing intently. Intrigued, Debbie joined in, her fingers probing and feeling for any irregularities. To her astonishment, she discovered a hidden latch underneath the plush cushion. With a click, a concealed compartment revealed itself. Inside, there was a stack of aged letters tied with a maroon ribbon. The topmost envelope read, "For the eyes of Mr. Andrews only." Taking a deep breath, Debbie began to peruse the letters. They detailed the library's financial troubles, with debt piling up. But what piqued her interest the most was the recurring mention of a mysterious donor willing to offer a substantial sum to rescue the library in exchange for a particular book, the elusive sonata. What baffled Debbie further was that none of these letters were signed. The correspondence was articulate, hinting at a person of education and stature, but there were no names, only the cryptic sign off, a friend of the library. With the newly discovered letters safely tucked in her bag, Debbie decided to discuss her findings with Detective Harrison. As she exited the library, Samuel approached her, looking a tad uncomfortable. "I saw you and your dogs investigating the reading chair," he began. "I've always suspected that those old chairs held secrets." Debbie, slightly amused, replied, "Seems like the library isn't the only one with debts. There's a mysterious benefactor offering help. Do you know anything about this?" Samuel frowned. Andrews mentioned some anonymous help, but I thought it was just a hopeful rumor. As Debbie reached home, she found Isabel on her doorstep, looking distraught. "I heard about your find," Isabel began, her voice shaky. "Mr. Andrews confided in me about the library's financial struggles. But I didn't know about this mysterious donor or their interest in the elusive sonata." Debbie invited her in, offering a comforting cup of chamomile tea. "We need to piece this puzzle together," she said determinedly. Late into the evening, Debbie's living room transformed into a hub of activity. Documents sprawled across the coffee table. Shadow and Halo were resting, but alert, and Isabel, with her historian expertise, was trying to decipher any coded messages within the book's illustrations. Debbie's determination was unwavering. With every twist and turn, the story grew more intriguing. The letters pointed to not just a matter of rare books or individual legacies, but to the very survival of Willowbrook's historical heart. By nightfall, the duo had made a list of potential friends of the library, those who had the means, motive, and opportunity to engage in this cryptic correspondence. Their list was short, but held influential names, some of whom were quite unexpected. The day's revelations weighed heavy on Debbie's mind. As she settled into bed, with Shadow and Halo snuggled at her feet, she pondered over the connections between the murder, a rare book, and the fate of the beloved library. The pieces were coming together, but the bigger picture still remained elusive. One thing was clear, though. Willowbrook's library held more than just books. It held secrets, deeply interwoven into the town's history, and Debbie was on the cusp of uncovering them. Chapter 7. Piecing the Pastry Puzzle. It was a brilliant morning in Willowbrook, the kind that felt as though the town itself was wrapped in the glow of an oven's warmth. Debbie stood at the center of the bustling town square, surrounded by a menagerie of foldable tables, each laden with an array of baked goods. This bake sale wasn't just about the delicious apple pies or the velvety chocolate eclairs. It was about community, memory, and a tribute to Mr. Andrews. As the townsfolk gathered, bringing their homemade treats, there was a palpable energy in the air. Music played, children danced, and laughter resonated. To an onlooker, this might seem like a simple communal gathering, But for Debbie, it was the perfect ruse to engage. Observe and listen. At one corner of the square, a display table showcased vintage items donated by residents for the sale. Among the worn trinkets, tarnished silverware, and antique dolls stood an elegant vintage book. Its cover, though faded, held intricate patterns and gilded lettering. Clara, the sophisticated heiress, seemed peculiarly drawn to this book. Her fingers gently traced the embossed designs, her expression an enigma. To the undiscerning eye, it could be a mere interest in antiques, but Debbie noticed something more, a glint of recognition, a shadow of anxiety. Shadow, with his uncanny intuition, seemed to sense Debbie's interest and stationed himself by the table, his eyes watching Clara closely. Halo, in contrast, was engrossed in the tantalizing aroma of a nearby sausage stand. As the bake sale progressed, Debbie chatted amicably with the townsfolk. From Mrs. Thompson's woes about her overproofed bread to young Finn's animated recounting of a new adventure novel, she took it all in. But amidst the casual banter, she dropped subtle questions, probing for information about the library, the mysterious book, and Mr. Andrews' final days. Isabel joined her side, helping sell pastries, but also tuning into the town's grapevine. They exchanged glances now and then, a silent understanding forming between them. Debbie approached Clara, her demeanor casual. "That's a lovely book, isn't it? It once belonged to my grandmother. Never got around to reading it. Do you recognize it?" Clara hesitated, her eyes darting to the book and then meeting Debbie's. It reminds me of a book from my childhood. There were tales my father used to narrate, tales intertwined with Willowbrook's history." The atmosphere became thick with unsaid words. The joviality of the bake sale became a backdrop to this subtle game of cat and mouse. Samuel approached them, holding up a dessert. "Have you tried the lemon tart yet?" "It's divine." The tension was momentarily diffused. As the day neared its end, and the shadows lengthened, Debbie felt both exhausted and exhilarated. She had gathered snippets, little crumbs of information, which she hoped would form a trail leading to the truth. After the sale, she and Isabel retired to her home, a sanctuary where they could dissect the day's findings. The vintage book from the display table, which Debbie had discreetly taken with her, lay on the coffee table. "This isn't just any book," Isabel began, her historian instincts kicking in. "It's a ledger, a record of Willowbrook's early days, including the founding of the library." And therein lay another puzzle piece. The pages, though yellowed with age, contained accounts of donors, benefactors, and patrons of the library. One name, in particular, stood out: Harrison Evergreen, an ancestor of Clara's, linked to a significant donation. The intricate web of the past seemed to be connecting with the present. Debbie knew she was on the right path. With Shadow resting by her feet and Halo attempting to nibble on leftover pastries, the evening became a brainstorming session. Debbie's kitchen, where countless pastries had been crafted, was now the hub of a different creation, a recipe to solve a murder mystery. Chapter 8. The Canine's Curious Discovery. The dawn's pale light painted Willowbrook in soft pastels, the morning sun reflecting off the dew-kissed cobblestone streets. Birds sang their early tunes, serenading the town awake. But in the quaint garden adjacent to the library, Halo was already up and about, acting on a whim, or perhaps an instinct. Debbie had brought the duo to the library early, intending to cross-check some references in the mysterious ledger. But while Shadow maintained his poised stance by the entrance, Halo was gripped by a sudden frenzy, digging furiously near the old oak tree. The rustling of the fallen leaves and his excited whimpers broke the morning's serenity. Debbie, alarmed by the commotion, hurried over. "Halo, what on earth?" she began, but her words trailed off when she caught sight of what Halo had unearthed. An old box that contained a shocking find inside. It was a book, a twin to the one from the bake sale. The leather-bound cover was stained with age, and its pages had been gnawed at by time. But its significance was undeniable. "Good boy, Halo," Debbie whispered, gently patting his golden head. Shadow, always the more perceptive one, began pacing around the oak tree, nose to the ground. His deep black coat shimmered in the early light, and there was a focused intensity in his eyes. Every so often, he would pause, sniff, then move to another spot. It was a dance of discovery, orchestrated by his instincts. While Halo busied himself with his newfound treasure, Shadow led Debbie to a moss-covered stone at the base of the tree. On closer inspection, there seemed to be inscriptions on it, worn down by weather and time. Isabel, having been informed of Halo's discovery, arrived with tools in hand. Together, they carefully brushed away the moss, revealing a plaque, "In memory of Harrison Evergreen, a true friend of Willowbrook." Below the inscription, however, were symbols, patterns that looked eerily familiar. Debbie's heart raced as she recognized them. They matched the embossed designs on the twin books. "Debbie, these are symbols used in early Willowbrook." "They often contained coded messages," Isabel whispered, her historian's passion evident. With the twin books and the stone as their guide, the duo, with Shadow and Halo's unwavering assistance, spent hours deciphering the code. The inscription spoke of a pact, a promise of safeguarding the library's legacy and its treasures. The day had transformed from calm morning serenity to an animated hive of activity. But as afternoon turned to evening, another revelation came to light. The symbols not only told of the library's history, but also hinted at a hidden vault within the building, a place where precious manuscripts and artifacts were stored. Shadow's demeanor had shifted from serious to protective. He took to guarding the entrance of the library, ensuring no one, apart from Debbie and Isabel, ventured in. When night fell, the library, with its towering bookshelves and echoing corridors, felt like a maze of mysteries. Debbie and Isabel, guided by the coded messages and Shadow's instincts, began their search for the hidden vault. Hours seemed to fly, and just as fatigue threatened to take over, Shadow's low growl led them to a seemingly innocuous wooden panel behind the history section. As Debbie pushed it, it swung open, revealing a staircase leading down. The descent into the vault was both thrilling and eerie. The narrow stone steps spiraled downwards, lit by sporadic torches. And when they finally reached the bottom, they stood before an ornate wooden door. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Shadow and Halo, in their unique ways, had brought them to the heart of the mystery. The door creaked open, revealing a chamber filled with ancient books, scrolls, and artifacts. But at its center stood a pedestal, and on it lay a manuscript titled The Legacy of Willowbrook. Debbie's heart swelled with gratitude for her loyal companions. The road to the truth was fraught with twists, but with Halo's mischief and Shadow's seriousness, they were one step closer to unraveling it. Chapter 9. Clara's Confession. The sun had already begun to set, casting golden hues across Willowbrook, when Debbie decided to pay Clara a visit. The evergreen mansion stood tall and imposing on the outskirts of the town, surrounded by gardens that hinted at old-world charm. It was a testament to a lineage that had once held significant sway in Willowbrook. Shadow and Halo walked alongside Debbie, their presence both a comfort and a silent statement of intent. The grand doors of the mansion were thrown open by a butler, who, upon recognizing Debbie and her canine companions, led them to a lavish drawing room. It was adorned with opulent tapestries and portraits of the evergreen lineage. Clara sat by a grand fireplace, the flames casting flickering shadows upon her face. There was a soft piano tune playing in the background, and the atmosphere was thick with an unsaid tension. "Debbie," Clara greeted, her voice restrained. "I wasn't expecting you." Debbie took a deep breath, pulling out the vintage book from her bag. "We need to talk, Clara." Claire's gaze fixated on the book, and for a moment her poised facade crumbled, revealing a depth of emotion. "I see you found it," she whispered. Debbie took a seat opposite Clara, the dog settling at her feet. "Clara, this isn't just about a book, is it? This is about legacy, history, and a treasure?" The heiress let out a deep sigh, her fingers playing with the locket around her neck. "My family, the Evergreens, have been a part of Willowbrook's tapestry for generations. This land, where the library stands, was once ours. It was sold under dire circumstances, but my great-grandfather always believed there was a treasure buried within its confines. A treasure that rightfully belonged to the Evergreens." Shadow let out a soft whimper, sensing the undercurrents of emotion in the room. Clara continued, her voice soft but charged with emotion. "That book, Debbie, was believed to contain the map to our legacy. It's why I was so drawn to it. Not out of greed, but out of a need to reclaim a piece of my family's history." Debbie looked intently into Clara's eyes, searching for the truth. "But did this desire to reclaim your family's legacy push you to harm Mr. Andrews?" Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. "I would never harm anyone, let alone Mr. Andrews. He was kind to me, understanding even. I approached him months ago, confiding my family's tale. We were trying to decipher the book's secrets together." A weighty silence enveloped the room, broken only by the soft crackling of the fireplace and Halo's occasional sighs. The story was unfolding, pieces of the puzzle finding their rightful place. "So, if not you, who would harm Mr. Andrews?" Debbie probed gently. Clara bit her lip, her fingers nervously playing with the edges of her lace shawl. There were rumors, whispers of another party interested in the treasure. Someone from outside Willowbrook. Mr. Andrews had mentioned an anonymous donor, an individual keen on acquiring the library and its secrets. As Claire's confession poured forth, Shadow's and Halo's reactions mirrored the emotions in the room. Shadow's solemnity and Halo's playful nudges provided a comforting presence amidst the storm of revelations. Debbie, taking a moment to absorb all the information, finally spoke. "We are on the cusp of unraveling this mystery, Clara. But I need your help, your trust, for the sake of Mr. Andrews and for the sake of Willowbrook." Clara nodded, wiping away her tears. "You have it, Debbie." As the evening turned to night, and the golden hues gave way to a blanket of stars, Debbie left the Evergreen mansion, her resolve strengthened. With the pieces falling into place, she felt closer to the truth, ready to confront the shadows lurking in Willowbrook's past. Chapter 10. A Suspicious Scholar. The next morning was overcast, the gray clouds reflecting the mood that had settled over Willowbrook. Debbie was back at the library, this time without her furry companions, as she wanted to delve deeper into the archives without distractions. As she rummaged through old newspapers and letters, the librarian, Mrs. Higgins, approached with a hushed voice. "Debbie, I thought you should know that Samuel was here frequently over the past few months. He seemed very keen on certain historical books, ones that Mr. Andrews had kept restricted." Debbie looked up, surprise evident in her eyes. "Samuel, but he's just a scholar. Why would he be interested in those specific books?" Mrs. Higgins adjusted her glasses. "That's just it. He wasn't looking into the town's general history. His focus seemed rather specific. He was particularly interested in documents pertaining to the land deeds and the Evergreen family's history." The mention of the Evergreens immediately caught Debbie's attention. If Clara was to be believed, and Debbie had no reason to doubt her sincerity, then Samuel's research seemed even more suspicious. Mrs. Higgins continued, "Once, I overheard a rather heated conversation between Samuel and Mr. Andrews. Samuel seemed rather frustrated about not being granted permission to access certain manuscripts. Determined to find out more, Debbie decided to pay a visit to Samuel's residence, a charming Victorian house situated on Elm Street. The garden outside was overgrown, indicating that its occupant was perhaps more invested in the past than the present. Knocking softly, Debbie was greeted by Samuel himself. His spectacles hung low on his nose, and his attire, a slightly crumpled shirt and vest, spoke of a man engrossed in his work. Mrs. Carter," he greeted, seemingly unsurprised. "I was expecting you." Taken aback, Debbie replied. "You were?" Samuel gestured her inside. The hallway was lined with bookshelves overflowing with books, some ancient and some more contemporary. "After the unfortunate demise of Mr. Andrews, I had a feeling our paths would cross. After all, you have a penchant for finding yourself in the midst of mysteries." They settled in the study, a cozy room illuminated by a roaring fireplace. On the table lay various maps, manuscripts, and letters. Samuel leaned forward. "I won't beat around the bush, Mrs. Carter. Yes, I had disagreements with Mr. Andrews, but my intentions were purely academic. The history of Willowbrook, particularly the Evergreen's legacy and the library's significance, fascinated me." Debbie frowned. But why the urgency? Why the heated exchanges? Samuel sighed, adjusting his glasses. "Because, Mrs. Carter, I believe there's a significant chapter of Willowbrook's history that remains hidden. The treasure that the Evergreens spoke of might not be a literal one. It could be knowledge, manuscripts, or scrolls that can change our perception of the town's origins." The scholar's passion was palpable. As the conversation flowed, so did the hours. Samuel spoke of ancient rituals, feuds, alliances, and a prophecy that hinted at a great revelation. Debbie, ever the discerning listener, took in all the information, trying to fit the pieces together. "But Samuel, if your intentions were pure, why not approach Clara Evergreen? Why the subterfuge?" Samuel's gaze dropped, a hint of regret evident. "Pride, Mrs. Carter. I thought I could unveil the mystery on my own, secure a place in the annals of history. But I now realize the importance of collaboration, especially with the direct descendant of the family involved." As Debbie took her leave, Samuel handed her a folded parchment. "This might help. It's a copy of a map I found hidden in one of the older books. It seems to point to specific locations within the library." Grateful, Debbie stepped out into the soft drizzle that had begun. As she walked back home, the weight of the mystery pressed on her. But she also felt invigorated. Samuel, for all his initial suspicious behavior, had provided another piece to the puzzle. Chapter 11: The Midnight Stakeout. The moon cast a silvery glow over Willowbrook, its serene light making the town look ethereal. Debbie, equipped with a flashlight and accompanied by Halo and Shadow, made her way stealthily to the library. The looming structure seemed more ominous than usual, its tall spires throwing long, haunting shadows in the moonlight. As they approached, Hello, ever the mischievous one, tried to chase after a fluttering moth, but a stern look from Debbie made him retreat. Shadow, in contrast, was all business, his eyes scanning the surroundings with a seriousness that would befit a detective on a mission. They entered through a side door Debbie knew was often left unlocked for late-night book deliveries. The air inside the library was thick with the musty smell of old books and leather. The tall shelves created a labyrinth, perfect for someone wanting to remain hidden. Debbie and her canine companions split up, each taking a different aisle. Shadow's keen senses were alert for any unusual movement or sound, while Halo sniffed around, more curious than cautious. A soft rustle from the history section caught Debbie's attention. Switching off her flashlight, she crept closer, straining her ears. The sound repeated, followed by a soft curse. It was unmistakably a human presence. Switching her flashlight back on, its beam illuminated a surprised Finn. The usually brash young boy looked caught, like a deer in headlights, holding a tattered book in one hand and a crumpled piece of paper in the other. "Finn!" Debbie exclaimed, both relieved and puzzled. "What on earth are you doing here?" Looking down, embarrassed, Finn mumbled, "I didn't think anyone would be here." Shadow, sensing no immediate threat, approached the boy and nudged him gently, almost as if asking the same question. Halo, on the other hand, playfully tried to grab the crumpled note from Finn's grasp. Flustered, Finn pulled away. It's just a silly letter. I hid it in one of the books a week ago. I was afraid Mr. Andrews had found it." Debbie, her curiosity piqued, asked, "A letter? Why would you hide a letter in a library book?" Blushing a deep shade of red, Finn hesitated before answering. "It's a love letter. I wrote it for Lily, the mayor's daughter. I hid it here because I thought it'd be safe till I gathered the courage to give it to her." The pieces clicked for Debbie. "And you thought Mr. Andrews found it?" Finn nodded. "I saw him looking through the book a few days ago, and I panicked." Debbie couldn't help but smile at the innocent escapades of young love. She handed the note back to Finn. "Your secret is safe with me. But you shouldn't be sneaking around, especially now." Finn looked sheepish. "I know. It was stupid." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter." Debbie sent Finn home as she and her pups settled in for the night. The atmosphere was broken by Halo, who, in his typical fashion, had found a rubber ball somewhere and was now insistent on playing fetch. Debbie chuckled, throwing the ball for him, while Shadow watched with an amused tilt of his head. It was heartening to see that in the midst of the chaos and mystery, life's simple joys still persisted. However, the night wasn't entirely without its revelations. While the stakeout hadn't uncovered any incriminating leads about Mr. Andrews's demise, it did cement in Debbie's mind the need to tread cautiously and to expect the unexpected. As the trio made their way out of the library, the first rays of dawn started to peek over the horizon. Willowbrook was waking up to a new day, and Debbie felt that they were one step closer to unraveling the puzzle that had ensnared the town. Chapter 12, Shadow's Deduction. The morning sun poured through the library's stained glass windows, casting vibrant hues onto the wooden floor. The scent of old paper and polished oak pervaded the air. Though the library had seen its share of drama in recent days, today it seemed particularly calm. Debbie was at a table, poring over the map that Samuel had given her. The map detailed peculiar symbols and annotations, making her wonder about the many secrets the library held. Halo, in his characteristic style, was joyfully chasing his tail in a sunlit corner, while Shadow lay by Debbie's feet, occasionally emitting a contemplative woof as he watched his brother's antics. Suddenly, Shadow's demeanor shifted. He stood up abruptly, ears perked, and trotted towards a section near the back of the library, a place filled with old reading tables and ornate rugs. He began barking, not the playful bark Debbie was accustomed to, but a more insistent and urgent one. Confused, Debbie followed him. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, but instead of responding, Shadow began to scratch at a particular spot on the floorboards underneath one of the grand tables. Kneeling down, Debbie felt the wood beneath her fingertips. It did seem different, less solid, and more hollow. Curiosity piqued. She carefully moved the heavy table aside with some effort and examined the floor closely. To her surprise, she found a concealed latch. Heart racing, she opened it, revealing a hidden compartment underneath. The space contained a treasure trove of books, leather-bound, gold-embossed, and in pristine condition. Each book looked incredibly rare and valuable. Skimming through the titles and the handwritten notes on the first pages, a realization dawned upon Debbie. These were the missing rare books, some of which had been reported stolen over the years. How had they come to be stashed here, right under everyone's noses? As Debbie sat back, pondering the implications of her discovery, Mrs. Higgins approached, having heard Shadow's incessant barking. "Oh, my heavens," she exclaimed, her face pale as she took in the cachet. "These books," They've been missing for ages. We thought they were stolen by outsiders. Debbie nodded, deep in thought. It seems we may have had an inside job. But why hide them here? Why not sell them or move them out of town? Mrs. Higgins sighed, wringing her hands. Mr. Andrews once mentioned to me, in passing, that there was a black market for such rare books. He said the value of some of these could easily run into thousands, but he also believed that no true lover of books could ever part with them. He often said that a true bibliophile might hoard them, but would find it almost impossible to sell. Could it be possible? Could someone in their quaint town, possibly even someone involved in the library's operations, be involved in the theft, and perhaps even the murder? Shadow, seemingly satisfied with his discovery, came over and rested his head on Debbie's lap. She stroked his fur affectionately. "Good boy, Shadow," she murmured, her eyes glinting with determination. "We've got a new lead." Halo, sensing the gravity of the moment, trotted over, abandoning his playful demeanor, and nuzzled his brother. It was a pivotal moment. The discovery of the hidden books had added another layer to the already intricate mystery. The stakes were higher, and the list of suspects was growing. Debbie realized that the library, with its towering bookshelves and hallowed halls, was not just a sanctuary for knowledge. It was also a repository of secrets, waiting for someone to unravel them. As the sun began its descent, casting the library in a golden hue, Debbie, Halo, and Shadow knew that their work was far from over. There were more clues to find, more secrets to uncover, and justice to be served. Chapter 13. The Confrontation. After her shocking discovery, Debbie took it upon herself to gather the townspeople in the library's grand reading room. The towering shelves filled with countless books seemed to stand as sentinels, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama. Shadow and Halo, both sensing the gravity of the situation, sat stoically by Debbie's side, their watchful eyes darting from one person to the next. "Thank you all for coming," Debbie began, her voice clear and steady. "We're here to discuss a matter of great importance concerning the library and the tragic loss of Mr. Andrews." She carefully laid out the collection of rare books they had found, hidden within the library. Gasps filled the room, and murmurings rippled through the gathered crowd. The aura of the room grew tense, with everyone on edge, waiting to see where this revelation would lead. Debbie continued, "These books didn't just disappear on their own. They were hidden here, right under our noses." She paused, locking eyes with Isabel and then Samuel. "And I believe I know why." Isabel's face paled, while Samuel straightened up, looking defiant. "Debbie," he began, his voice slightly shaky, "you might think you know what's going on, but it's more complicated than you can imagine." Debbie, undeterred, laid out her suspicions. "Isabel, you and Samuel were trying to save this beloved library from mounting debts, a noble cause, but you chose a questionable path. Stealing rare books and perhaps even selling them on the black market?" Isabel's composure broke. "It started small," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Just one book, thinking it wouldn't be missed. But then it snowballed. We realized that by selling a few, we could save many. The library was in such dire straits." Samuel nodded, backing her up. "Mr. Andrews caught wind of our plan. We thought he would understand, that he would see the bigger picture. But he was a purist, believing in the sanctity of each and every book." A tense silence settled in the room. Mrs. Higgins, with her hand on her heart, whispered, "But why did he have to die?" Debbie sighed deeply. "That's the million-dollar question. Did the disagreements lead to something more sinister?" Isabel shook her head vehemently. "We never, ever wanted to harm him. Yes, we had our differences. He didn't agree with our methods. But murder him, never." Samuel added, "It was an operation, a mission to save the library." not a vendetta against Mr. Andrews. In fact, we were planning to return the books once the library was financially stable again. Clara, the heiress, chimed in, her voice filled with sadness. But someone did want to harm him. If not you two, then who? Debbie looked around the room. She knew that while they had unraveled one part of the mystery, there were still pieces missing. The rare books were a motive, yes, but there might be other reasons, other grudges. Halo, always curious, nudged a bag near Samuel's feet. Samuel quickly moved to intercept, but not before Debbie caught a glimpse of a manuscript inside. "What's that?" she inquired. Samuel sighed, "A work of mine. A research piece about the history of this library. Mr. Andrews and I disagreed about its publication. He thought some secrets were best left buried." Debbie frowned. "More secrets? In this library?" Samuel nodded. "Stories, rumors, really, of hidden treasures and coded messages. Old town tales that Mr. Andrews felt might attract the wrong kind of attention." The room was buzzing with a mix of disbelief and intrigue. The layers of the mystery deepened with every revelation. Debbie took a deep breath. "This library has been a sanctuary for all of us. We owe it to Mr. Andrews and ourselves to protect its legacy and find the truth." As the townspeople nodded in agreement, the setting sun painted the room with a soft orange glow, casting long shadows on the floor. The library, with its countless stories and secrets, stood still and silent, awaiting the final unraveling of its most real and tragic tale. Chapter 14. Red Herrings Resolved. The library, usually a haven of hushed whispers and silent reflections, was now bustling with anxious townspeople. Every person was touched by the revelations, the betrayals, and the still looming question of what caused Mr. Andrews' demise. As the sun began its descent, and the room was bathed in the twilight's glow, Debbie stood center stage, commanding the attention of every individual. Shadow, loyal as always, sat close, his dark fur almost blending with the wooden floor, while Halo, his tail occasionally giving a twitch, lay nearby, eyes darting around the room, as if expecting to catch the slightest inconsistency in someone's story. Isabel, her face stained with tears from her earlier confession, stood next to Samuel. Both looked defeated, weighted down by their guilt of the theft, but firm in their assertion that they had no hand in Mr. Andrews' death. Debbie cleared her throat, her voice echoing through the library's vast chambers. "We've unveiled secrets today, some heart-wrenching, others shocking. But the most pressing question remains unanswered. What happened to Mr. Andrews?" She walked over to the pile of scattered books, the very first clue she noticed. "It might seem like chaos," she said, kneeling and meticulously examining each book's position. "But to Mr. Andrews, every book was sacred. He wouldn't simply throw them around. There's a pattern." Picking up the books one by one, she started to arrange them on a table. The town watched, rapt in attention. As the last book was set down, Halo gave a small bark, perhaps of encouragement, or perhaps simply curious. Shadow, with a low whine, nudged one book in particular. Debbie stared at the book and then smiled, a gentle, sad smile. "Shadow, you've done it again." The books, now arranged in a specific sequence, had titles that read like a desperate plea, or maybe an apology. Forgive, Confrontation, Truth, Heart, Lost, and finally, "It's clear to me," Debbie began, her eyes moist. "Mr. Andrews discovered the theft and confronted Isabel. But in that emotional turmoil, his heart gave out." Isabel sobbed. He tried to speak, but he just fell. It happened so quickly. I panicked and ran out, leaving everything in disarray. She looked up, her face a map of guilt and pain. "I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to save the library." Samuel gently placed his arm around Isabel, trying to comfort her. "We both did," he murmured. The room, filled with townspeople who had known Mr. Andrews for years, was silent, absorbing the implications. The beloved librarian's death was an accident, a tragic consequence of passion and desperation. Debbie softly spoke, breaking the poignant stillness, while Isabel and Samuel made mistakes. It's essential to remember their intent. They loved this library, maybe too much. But we need to ensure that Mr. Andrews' legacy, his love for literature and this community, isn't overshadowed by this incident. Mrs. Higgins, wiping away her tears, nodded. Let's remember him for his kindness, his dedication, and his love for books. The townspeople, moved by Debbie's words, started to murmur in agreement. The sentiment was clear. While justice would be served, they would also remember and cherish the fond memories of Mr. Andrews. As the evening crept in and the library's antique chandelier cast its golden glow, Debbie, with Halo and Shadow by her side, pondered the mysteries of life, love, and loss. Some stories, she mused, don't always have a neat conclusion, but perhaps that's what makes them so profoundly human. Chapter 15. Peace Restored. The days that followed were heavy with a combined sense of loss and relief. The towering oaks that lined the town's streets seemed to stand a little more solemnly, their leaves rustling with whispered memories of the cherished librarian. But, as is nature's way, life persisted. A week after the tumultuous unraveling at the library, the town gathered in the central square. An impromptu memorial had been set up for Mr. Andrews. People from all walks of life came forward, placing flowers, sharing stories, and leaving behind books with personal notes inscribed within. It was a tribute fitting for a man who had dedicated his life to spreading knowledge and fostering a love for reading. Isabel and Samuel, though now burdened by their actions, were not vilified by the town. Most understood the depth of their love for the library and the desperate measures they took to protect it. Their legal sentences were indeed more lenient, with community service being a primary punishment. Both took up roles in educating the young townsfolk about the importance of integrity, even when intentions are noble. On one such bright morning, as Isabel spoke to a group of children about her mistakes and the lessons she learned, a mysterious envelope was delivered to the library. The thick cream-colored envelope had a wax seal, indicating its significance. Inside was a generous check, enough to clear the library's debts and ensure its smooth functioning for the foreseeable future. There was no name, but a simple note attached to preserve the heart and soul of our town. In memory of Mr. Andrews. Whispers traveled fast, and soon enough, speculation pointed towards Clara. She never confirmed nor denied it, but her enigmatic smile whenever asked gave enough away. The library was not only saved, but now thrived, with people from neighboring towns visiting, ensuring Mr. Andrews' legacy lived on. Debbie, in her gentle and wise way, became even more cherished in the community. The tale of her investigative prowess, aided by her 2 trusty Labradors, became somewhat legendary. Children would often stop by her house, hoping to hear tales of her adventures, or simply to pet Halo and Shadow. Speaking of the mischievous duo, Halo and Shadow seemed to bask in their newfound fame. Halo, with his ever-present playful energy, would often steal socks from the neighbors, only to return them with a cheeky glint in his eyes. Shadow, always the serious and thoughtful one, took to lounging on Debbie's porch, keeping a watchful eye on the world around him. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, Debbie sat in her garden with a cup of her favorite chamomile tea. Halo and Shadow lay by her feet, the 3 of them enjoying a moment of quiet reflection. "It's funny how life works," she whispered, stroking Shadow's sleek black fur. "One moment you're simply living, and the next, you're thrust into an adventure you never saw coming. Halo, sensing the mood, playfully nudged a ball towards her. She chuckled. Always the mischief maker, aren't you? Debbie sighed contentedly, taking in the beauty around her. The fragrance of blooming roses, the soft chirping of crickets, and the distant laughter of playing children filled the air. The trio had faced challenges, unraveled mysteries, and played their part in healing a community. But now, as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, they were ready for a period of peace. That is, until their next adventure beckoned. And as the night deepened, a soft glow emanated from Debbie's home, a beacon of warmth, love, and stories yet to be told.